a sick and twisted thing all narcissists do. Narcissists are dysfunctional people who have many toxic behaviours, and one of their most sick and twisted behaviours is narcissistic projection, because it is very confusing and it can drive a victim crazy. Narcissistic projection is a defence mechanism where the narcissist will attribute their own unacceptable thoughts, feelings or behaviours to you, as a means of avoiding accountability, maintaining their self-image, protecting their ego and self-perception, manipulating you, controlling relationships, and gaining power by exploiting emotional vulnerabilities. Some common examples of narcissistic projection include accusing others of lying when they themselves are dishonest, claiming others are manipulative while manipulating others, blaming others for aggression when they initiated conflict, asserting others are selfish while prioritizing their own interests, and denying their own flaws while attributing weaknesses to others, to where they may often name, call, rage, yell and scream. And they will become violent, hostile and aggressive towards you. But instead of taking accountability for their own behaviours, they will project it onto you. They will blame and accuse you of doing the things that they are doing, which is one of the most ridiculous, unreasonable, illogical and inappropriate things that you will ever experience when you are dealing with someone who is narcissistic, because they will act like they didn't do anything. And then they will blame you. They will say that you're the one who did it, which can drive you insane. Because it's very difficult for a normal person to understand, especially if you've never cured of projection. But all of a sudden, they will yell and scream at you. And you might leave the situation so that you can calm down. And maybe after a few hours or days have passed, you may follow up with them to try and find out more about what caused them to react that way. But they will look at you dead in the eye and tell you that it was you. They will say that you were the one who was yelling and screaming. You were the one who was losing your temper for no reason, which will fry your brain. It will mentally exhaust you to the point where you're unable to concentrate and make decisions. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because your brain is wired correctly, and their mental disorder and mismatch of behaviours are causing neurons in your brain to misfire, which can cause a number of conditions such as seizures, which are when sudden bursts of electrical activity in the brain causes your behaviour, consciousness or sensations to change suddenly. Or epilepsy, which is a central nervous system condition where clusters of neurons misfire, causing the body to respond abnormally. Schizophrenia, a complex brain disorder which involves disruptions to the brain's corollary discharge mechanism. Corollary discharge is a process that helps people to distinguish between their own sounds and external sounds. When the brain's corollary discharge is disrupted, it may produce schizophrenic symptoms such as auditory hallucinations, altered perceptual experiences, disrupted sense of self, and difficulty learning and remembering. These are just a few of the many ailments that narcissistic projection can cause to a healthy person's brain, because narcissistic projection causes anxiety, depression, and trauma. It induces states of constant fear and stress, prolonged emotional exhaustion, emotional numbing or hyperarousal. The gaslighter distorts reality and creates confusion. It produces emotional dysregulation which may cause intense mood swings. It creates cognitive dissonance to where you begin to hold conflicting values and beliefs, because it causes you to dissociate and disconnect from your own thoughts and feelings, which may result in adrenal fatigue, physiological stress response exhaustion, neuroplasticity changes, altered brain connections and stress-induced neuroinflammation, because your sense of reality is being distorted. They're looking at you dead in the eye with 100% conviction. They're saying that it was you, and initially you may know that it wasn't you, because gaslighting is often a gradual process. It can occur rapidly, but usually it takes months or even years. It depends on the intensity of the manipulation and the level of skill involved, as well as your level of vulnerability, emotional dependence, isolation and critical thinking. All of these factors combined determine how long it will take for the narcissist to fully distort your reality, because reality distortion has several stages. It begins with idealization, which lasts for 1 to 3 months, where the narcissist presents a perfect image and gains your trust. Devaluation for 3 to 6 months, where they criticize, blame shift and emotionally manipulate you. Gaslighting for 6 months to 2 years, where the reality distortion accelerates and you begin to doubt your own perceptions. Emotional dependence for 1 to 5 years, where you become increasingly reliant on the narcissist, until finally they have achieved total reality distortion, where your reality is severely skewed. But you can prevent this from progressing by working on your self-esteem and becoming emotionally independent, because victims with low self-esteem, trauma and emotional dependence are more susceptible to the narcissist projection and gaslighting. You can also raise an external support network and improve your critical thinking by becoming more self-aware, analysing assumptions, identifying problems, analysing different viewpoints, evaluating evidence, practicing curiosity, reading and researching widely, thinking for yourself, understanding your mental process and developing a questioning mind, because those with stronger critical thinking skills resist distortion, while those who are emotionally dependent, isolated and lacking critical thinking skills will experience signs of gaslighting progression, which may include self-doubt and confusion, emotional instability, difficulty making decisions, loss of confidence, isolation from supported networks, and increased anxiety and depression, which is why you must seek support from trusted individuals, document incidents, set clear boundaries, prioritise self-care, and consider therapy or counselling. Because the narcissist will use projection. They will gaslight you, they will shift the blame onto you, and they will even call you the narcissist. They will accuse you of thinking you're better than everyone. They will accuse you of being hostile and aggressive, even while they're calling you names and attacking you. And even when they're violent, they will lash out at you, and then they will run and hide behind someone else and say that you're trying to hurt them because they're sick and twisted. Brains are not firing correctly. They have an altered brain structure and reduced grey matter as a result of their unreasonably high sense of self-importance. So while they may be still choosing these behaviours, it is a part of their mental disorder. And that is why it makes no sense to healthy people, because it is a disorder. It doesn't always mean that they have a brain injury, but their illness is caused by psychological pressures like stress and trauma, and this affects their mood, thoughts and behaviours, to where many of them may actually be convinced that you are the one who's creating these problems because they have cognitive distortions. They hold a confirmation bias, to where they selectively interpret information to support their narrative. A self-serving bias where they attribute successes to themselves and failures to you, and they're also gaslighting themselves. They're manipulating their own reality to maintain control, to where they will experience emotional regulation difficulties, a lack of empathy and narcissistic rage. And they will project, deny and rationalise their behaviours, which will cause you emotional distress, trauma, self-doubt, isolation and a loss of self-esteem. But it also creates a feedback loop for them, to where their anger and rage will grow and build against you, regardless of how nice you're trying to be or how much you're trying to make things better. The more you try to help them, the more it just makes things worse, because you may ask them to calm down or to stop yelling at you, but then they will say that you need to calm down, or that you're the one who is yelling. even while they're becoming even more violent and hostile. So it creates this feedback loop where they get angrier and angrier, because they have to believe and convince themselves that you are the one who is creating the problems. You are the one who is yelling. You are the one who needs to calm down. You are the one who started the fights. Because then it justifies the behaviour and it allows it to grow. Which is why it's exactly where they want to get you. They want to keep you in their feedback loop, because they enjoy being angry. It allows them to assert dominance and maintain control. It regulates their emotions. It masks their vulnerabilities, anxiety and insecurity. It gives them an adrenaline rush. It provides them with a sense of power and excitement, because that outbursts ensure attention from you. And not only are they projecting their toxic behaviours onto you and creating a feedback loop which justifies that anger and rage and allows them to continue to abuse you, but they are also using you to self-identify through the use of a psychological mechanism known as identification, which is where they incorporate your desirable traits into their self-image. Some examples may include intellectual superiority, where they claim your innovative ideas as their own. Emotional intelligence, where they pretend to possess empathy or self-awareness. Achievements, where they take credit for your success. And virtues, where they portray themselves as morally superior. And they utilize identification because it reinforces their inflated self-image. It relieves their feelings of envy. It compensates for their feelings of inadequacy. And it is also a form of manipulation. It gains admiration, trust or control. And it leaves them with a lack of self-awareness, to where they are unable to recognize their own flaws, while it may cause you to question your own abilities. It may cause you to self-doubt, because it undermines your confidence. It emotionally exhausts you, because when they engage in identification, you're constantly having to deal with their narcissistic demands, to where you may experience a loss of identity. An erasure of personal accomplishments, because through the use of identification, the narcissist has attributed your accomplishments and desirable traits to themselves. So although you may be interacting with them, they don't even see you. It's as if they're looking into a mirror and you don't exist. Which is why when they're angry, there is nothing you can say to them. You can't calm them down, because if you are anything other than a puppet that is under their complete control, they view you as threatening. They view you as an extension of themselves, a mirror reflection of everything that they want to be. So if you are independent and you have your own autonomy, they see it as though their own mirror reflection now has a life of its own, which is a frightening experience for the narcissist, because they're identifying with your traits and accomplishments, so they see it as though they're saying this to you. They will never be able to see the kindness that you are showing to them, because they envy you, they want to be you. So for them to accept anything kind, positive or genuine from you would mean that they have to detach from you. It would mean that they could no longer identify with your positive qualities and traits. So as long as you're still living, they will never be able to see you. They will never be able to view you as a separate individual. They will only ever view you as an extension of themselves, which means that they will always disown the parts of themselves that they don't like and assign them to you. They will hurt you, but they will see it as it's you who's hurting them. They will yell and scream at you, but they will see it as though you are the one who is yelling and screaming at them. Because they can't ever see you, and they can't ever see themselves. So all of your kind words and efforts to calm them down have fallen on deaf ears, because in their mind that's coming from them to them, which is why the only thing you can do is go into contact, because they're always going to identify with anything good you say or do for them, and they're always going to project their toxic behaviours onto you, which means that you're always going to be punished and blamed for all of the good things you're doing for them. They're never going to give you any credit. They're not even going to acknowledge it, because they see everything good about you as a mirror reflection of themselves. They don't view you as a separate person. They view you as an extension of themselves. So they will project and they will blame you for the things that they are doing, which means that the more time you spend around them, the more sick and twisted it gets. And even if you return to them years after you've got no contact, they're still going to be the same. They're not going to have changed anything about themselves. So you may be reaching out trying to gain some understanding, but they will say they don't know what you're talking about. They will say they don't remember ever being mean to you or saying anything bad to you. They will say that all they ever did was try to help you. They'll have cared for you, which will mess with your mind. It will baffle you, because you may recall things differently. You may remember that you were the one who was saying and doing all of that for them, but they couldn't recognise it or appreciate you, because they saw you as a mirror reflection of themselves. So if you return back to them, all you're going to get is a mirror reflection of who you used to be several years before. Or if they have been stalking you and they have been monitoring what you're doing, they may be more up to date on your accomplishments and characteristics. Unless they preferred the outdated version of who you used to be, or if they saw it as though it was going to get them more supply. But they won't have changed anything about themselves. They will just be using parts of your identity as a part of their mask, as a part of their false identity, which only fuels their disorder, so they will never change. They will only get worse, but on the surface they may look better than they did before. Because they've taken elements of you and of other sources of supply, and used them to polish the false self in the same way that a car salesman may give an old car a new paint job. So outwardly they may look happier and healthier than ever before, but internally they're deteriorating, because they're not attending to their mental and emotional health. They can't ever look at themselves or accept themselves. So when you go back to a narcissist, it's kind of like taking a bite of a shiny red apple and then realising that it's rotten inside. It only looks good on the outside, because that's all that they focus on. If they were attending to their emotional and psychological well-being, then they would never have done those things to you. And if they were working on themselves during the time that you were away, they would have had a healthier response to you. Rather than ignoring you or giving you the silent treatment, they do that because they've neglected themselves. They still can't see you. They still can't acknowledge all of the wonderful things you did for them, because they're still identifying with your positive characteristics, and they're projecting everything they hate about themselves onto you, which is only fueling their disorder. It's speeding up the process of their mental deterioration. Because narcissistic abuse has more severe psychological consequences for the narcissist than their own victims. It increases their emotional dysregulation. It intensifies their anger, anxiety, and aggression. It worsens their cognitive dissonance to where they will rationalize more extreme abusive behavior, which creates internal conflict. Their continued exploitation diminishes their capacity for empathy, which reinforces their false identity. It reinforces their narcissistic traits and solidifies their harmful behaviors. It causes their mental health to deteriorate, and they will experience social isolation and alienation from genuine people due to their abusive behavior. And they will also experience neurobiological changes. They will experience amygdala hyperactivity, increased emotional reactivity, dopamine dysregulation, addiction-like behavior, oxytocin suppression and reduced empathy, as well as a number of other psychological consequences. Chronic anxiety and stress, because maintaining the narcissistic facade creates internal tension. Depression. Their unfulfilled expectations and a lack of genuine connection will lead to emotional emptiness. Emotional dysregulation, intensified anger, irritability, and mood swings. Cognitive decline, reduced prefrontal cortex activity, impaired decision making, and reduced impulse control. And paranoia and mistrust, to where they will be expected betrayal. They will be constantly on guard. But then they will also experience empathy erosion, which is a reduced capacity for genuine emotional connections, and emotional numbness, to where they will have difficulty experiencing genuine emotions, and insecurities and self-doubt, fear of exposure, inadequacy, which will result in envy and resentment towards your success and happiness, and their disorder will only worsen as they age. Which is why, if they project it onto you, the worst thing you can do is return back to the narcissist, especially if it has been some time. Because the more time goes by, the worse they will become. And they will normalize their attitudes and behaviours. It may have seemed boundary breaking and outrageous to them before, but now it's second nature. Because they're degenerating. They're deteriorating physically, mentally and morally. Which is why if they already did you wrong, they actually did you a favour, because now you have the opportunity to break away from them. And then you won't have to witness the monstrosity that they will become later in life. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Hit the subscribe button to receive the notifications. If you would like to support the channel, you can donate at paypal.me/Narc Survivor. You can book a one-on-one with me on my website. It's narcsurvivor.co.uk. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.